Hello, welcome. I'm Tara Adams, Vice President of Trust Services for Johnson Trust Company, and we are so glad you're joining us today. And on behalf of Johnson Investment Council's Women's Initiative, we welcome you to our webinar about building financial confidence. We care about what matters to you and believe you'll gain helpful insights from our in-house experts that will strengthen your financial literacy and confidence as you journey through many of life's events. Today, we will learn about building financial confidence with these pillars: planning, investing, and saving. At Johnson, our clients share with us what matters to them, and they express their day-to-day challenges in life. Our female financial advisors are experiencing many of these same things, balancing careers, motherhood, and caretaking for family members, to name a few. Our financial advisors are skilled at walking our clients through many of life's milestone events, and a recent Johnson survey revealed that financial literacy was a major concern and an issue about which women wanted to learn more. You may already know an essential indicator of a woman's ability to make financial decisions is her level of financial literacy. Financial literacy can be defined as not only the knowledge and understanding of financial concepts and risks, but also the skills, motivations, and confidence to apply such knowledge and understanding to make effective decisions. As evidence indicates, and maybe no surprise to you, women lack confidence in making effective financial decisions. Our goal today is to strengthen your confidence and your knowledge so you are empowered with the financial literacy you need. A woman's confidence to make financial decisions is extremely important, since women control more than $10 trillion, about 33% of total US household financial assets. Women are set to inherit $30 trillion, and with 46.6% of the workforce in America being female, it's our passion to ensure the women we serve know they can save and still meet their budgetary and savings goals, even though women make 82% of what men make today. Our panel of experts includes Elizabeth Schaefer, Laura Mattern, and Gwen Burke. They are going to share a bit about their experience and passion for women and investing. Elizabeth, will you kick us off?
Absolutely. As Tara said, I'm Elizabeth Schaefer, and I'm a portfolio manager in our Dayton, Ohio office. My husband and I are blessed with 4 children, and together we have navigated the responsibilities of home life in conjunction with our careers. As many of you know, it's not always easy, but it is rewarding. I'm excited to be with you today to explore the topic of financial literacy. We hope at the conclusion of our time together that you will experience a boost to your financial confidence. I am passionate about wealth planning and investing, and in our busy world, I'm honored to serve as my client's most trusted business partner.
Thanks, Tara. Thanks, Elizabeth. My name is Laura Mattern, and I am a portfolio manager in Cincinnati. I work with individuals and families providing investment management and financial planning. My career started in the 90s. I have an undergraduate degree in finance and economics, and I took a job at a local bank in Cincinnati. I met my husband at work, and our bank experienced a merger, and we were transferred to Michigan, out of state, both of our jobs. And after a few years, we found ourselves with a young family. We were living hundreds of miles away from our support system, and we had 2 really demanding jobs. And we knew something had to change. So we made the difficult decision that I would leave my job and become a full-time parent. We ended up moving 3 more times, eventually back to Cincinnati. And then just a little over 4 years ago, our life circumstances changed again. My husband was going through a job transition, and I was able to leverage my professional contacts and experience to get a position at Johnson. I kind of feel like I got to have my cake and eat it too. I got to be home when I needed to be home with my family, and also able to restart my career. I know what it's like to be a stay-at-home parent. I know what it's like to be a working parent, and I really bring that perspective when I'm working with clients.
Thanks, Laura. And I'm Gwen Burke. I've been at Johnson for a little over 7 years, and 3.5 of those have been client-facing. And I'm passionate about financial literacy and financial planning and confidence because I personally was dealing with student debt right out of college. So at that time in my life, it was really imperative to learn and build my skill set regarding financial understanding. And so now that I have that skill set, I believe it's imperative for all individuals to understand and feel confident about their financial situation at all stages in life.
Ladies, thank you so much. I know that we know each other well, but those that are joining us today might not yet know you. And so I really appreciate knowing that probably some folks that have joined today are at various stages of life and can maybe connect with what you've already been through and maybe where you are today. And so I think it just helps make it really relatable, but I'm excited. Let's jump in. There's a ton of helpful information that we're gonna chat about today. But before we get started, I just wanted to let those of us that are on the webinar today know that if you have any questions while we're talking, just throw your questions in the Q&A box. And then if there is enough time at the end, we're going to talk through some of those questions and have our experts here respond to those. So let's get started. Our first topic is going to be on planning, as I mentioned at the beginning. And you know, Elizabeth, we've talked about this before, but we know you don't need to wait until you have a lot of money to create a financial plan. You can benefit from some financial planning at any stage of life, but we have noticed there are certain life events that often require a financial plan. What are some triggering events that are an excellent opportunity to revisit or build a financial plan?
Well, you're absolutely right, Tara. There's just really never a bad time to plan, right? Planning can provide clarity around our financial decisions, and clients often ask me questions such as, what is a reasonable nest egg on which to retire? Or how much do I need to save for my child's college education, or perhaps my grandchild's college education, a wedding? Planning for such life events is very personal, and our planning is very tailored to each individual situation. So of course we have technology that helps us work through planning for these expected milestones. But, you know, life often has other plans. And recently a client of mine lost her father and her brother within 9 months of one another, leaving her to care for her aging mother, both loved ones' estates. If that wasn't enough for her, then within 18 months, the company that her husband worked for sold the business, and he retired much earlier than anticipated. So together we worked through the extensive wealth and estate planning process that her family needed, including helping to advise her 2 adult daughters. As a trusted advisor, I really want to intimately know what our clients are trying to achieve and helping to plan and provide financial security during milestone moments such as sending a child to college, and during uncertain times, such as the death of a loved one, as I just discussed.
Yeah, and I mean, what a big story, but you know, we know this is not necessarily a rare one or a unique one. Life can throw a lot of these big changes all at once at us. And it is helpful to have a plan because it can help us feel more comfortable and secure. And we also need to know, you know, when we're ready to build a financial plan. And so, Laura, where do we begin if we're ready to build a financial plan for the first time, or if our circumstances have changed, whether drastically or just a little bit? Where do we even begin?
Yes, if you're going through a life event like we've already discussed, and you already have a financial plan, or you're getting ready to start from scratch and build a financial plan for the first time, you need to start by determining what your financial goals are. This is just brainstorming what you want to do with your money. Perhaps you want to start a new business or save for a new home, a first home, or a larger home. Maybe your passion is around a charity that you really want to support through your work and through the money that you have. Or maybe you want to really fine tune your budget and your savings so that you can work less and have more time for other things that are important to you. Everyone's situation is unique. We're all going to have unique goals, but we want to make sure when we are building a financial plan that we are protecting ourselves from difficulties, financial hardships that we could run into now, and that we're preparing for the future, because most people want to retire at some point. So we want to make sure that we're saving for retirement, and we are building an emergency fund just in case, you know, when life throws you a wrench, you're prepared you're prepared for those situations. Once you have established your goals, we recommend that you write them down. Writing down goals gives you something to reflect on in the future as you're hopefully down the path reaching those goals. It also can create excitement, and there's evidence that when you write your goals down, you are more likely to accomplish those goals. The next step in financial planning is to track your spending. You know what your goal is and where you want to be, and you need to determine where you are right now. And I'll admit that this is my least favorite part of the financial planning process. I am married to a CPA and he really enjoys tracking spending. So I just let him take care of that. And I think it can be a hurdle for a lot of people because there are a lot of emotions and a guilt associated with money and spending. But if you have a budget and you set goals and you are tracking your spending, you can alleviate some of the negative emotion associated with money and spending. And to get started, you want to look back several months and group or categorize your expenses into categories like department store purchases, travel, food, restaurants, housing. There are apps that can be linked to your credit card and your checking account that can do some of the work for you, but it doesn't have to be complicated. You can create a simple spreadsheet. It just has to be something that really works for you, because this is an important part of financial planning that you need to be able to continue. Tracking your spending on a regular basis can give you an accurate picture of where your money is going and can help you determine where you would like it to go instead.
Yeah, I really appreciate how you are relating, I know, to me and maybe to others who are joining today, that the writing down of the spending can conjure up some feelings that might not feel so good. But if we can push through that and maybe not judge ourselves so harshly and extend some grace our way, I think we can be on our way to a really great space, because we've done the fun of brainstorming. Where do we want to be? The writing down of how we're spending our money is, here's where we are today. And there's always a bridge between where we are and where we want to be. And, you know, Gwen, I know you've got experience in counseling your clients through this as well. So if we know a budget is one of the most effective ways to get control of your financial life, are there any guidelines for building a budget?
Thanks, Tara. There definitely are. Budgeting can sound like a daunting word, and it can look in a myriad of different ways and different complexities. But what's most important is to do what you're willing to stick to. So maybe it's one of those apps and simplifying it, or maybe it's a spreadsheet that you can track things manually yourself, kind of bring it back to more control. But whatever you choose to do, make sure it's something that you know you could stick to. And if you kind of get disrupted, you can come back to it. A great starting place that we often recommend in terms of a budget style for people is something called a 50-30-20 budget. And so each of those numbers stand for something different. So that 50%, so it's 50%, that first number. And so what you want to do with that one is target no more than 50% of your income going towards needs, such as your mortgages, your insurance, groceries, all of those kind of things you need to stay afloat. And then the next bucket is the 30% bucket, where you want no more than 30% of your income to go towards wants, like restaurants or clothing, or maybe getting your hair done or anything like that. And then the last bucket is that 20% bucket. So the 20% bucket is where you want to look for savings, investing, and paying off any high interest debts. So high interest debts primarily are credit cards, but you may have some other things outstanding that you're looking to get off your balance sheet. And so the goal is, once you've categorized all of your spending and the tracking that Laura mentioned, it gives you a good idea of where you are in each of these 50-30-20 buckets. And once you have identified them, it gives you the opportunity to adjust and kind of get back in line with the target. And so ultimately the goal is for that 20% or more bucket to be larger and larger over time. And as you make these lifetime adjustments, and so that 20% bucket goes towards your short-term savings and long-term investing.
That is really helpful, especially since we know that writing down the spending piece can bring up some bad feelings, but Now it's like, where do we go? Now I know I'm not where I want to be. And so having this guideline of the 50-30-20 rule can be really helpful. And I think it can be helpful for those that maybe don't allocate enough toward the wants bucket. Maybe some of us really go extreme on, I'm just focusing on my needs and my savings, and they're not living at all today because they're not where they want to be in 10, 20, 30 years, whatever the guideline or timeline might be for them. But then on the flip side, maybe some of us spend too much time on wants. You know, you mentioned maybe getting your hair done was in the wants bucket. Maybe we could argue that could be in the needs bucket. But generally speaking, I think the 50-30-20 rule just hushes down some of that feeling and those questions of, can I do this? How do I do this? And so we know that saving is really important, and we've got the 20% flag for 20% of our income, but the world of saving seems so big sometimes. So Elizabeth, you also have a lot of experience in this area. And so if we're focusing on saving 20% of our income, how do we determine the best vehicles to use for saving?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that important question, Tara, especially as more of the responsibility for retirement savings or for saving for retirement is placed on us at this point, because corporate pension plans and defined benefit plans are really vehicles of the past. So the onus is really on us. And deciding where to allocate that 20% savings raises a lot of questions, and it is quite important. So in order to help us out, we've created a graphic, which we're going to put on the screen to help serve as a roadmap for this 20% savings. Perfect. So here's what I tell clients and friends and family that ask me how to prioritize savings. First, as Laura talked about, you want to create an emergency fund. This could mean 6 or 12 months of expenses saved in a cash or money market account. Next, you want to be sure that you pay off any high interest debt, just like Gwen said, such as credit card debt. We definitely don't want to be paying those high interest rates. Then we can get into the actual meat of your savings. So for this, I would prioritize saving within your employer-sponsored retirement plan, such as a 401k. Most plans offer an employer match, and this is typically offered as a percentage of your pre-tax income, and it is absolutely something to take advantage of if it's available to you. Additionally, if you participate in a high deductible healthcare plan, you may be eligible to save in a health savings account, often referred to as an HSA. HSA funds roll over year to year if you don't spend them on healthcare, and they may earn interest or other earnings which are not taxable. So another great vehicle that you can save if you're in a high deductible healthcare plan. So from here, I would prioritize any additional retirement savings beyond your employer-sponsored plan, such as a 401k. So these dollars could either be allocated to a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, depending on your annual income and whether you file jointly or individually. So in 2022, this year, you can save $6,000 in either of those vehicles if you're under 50 years of age. But if you're over 50 years of age, we call it a catch-up contribution, and you can save an additional $1,000. So that would be $7,000. So great options as well beyond your employer matched account. So lastly, I would say any remaining dollars can be balanced between your short-term goals, such as a home improvement project, and long-term goals that can be invested more strategically in an individual or a joint account.
Mm-hmm. This is really helpful, Elizabeth, and I really liked the mapping out priorities page because I think it shows the nice flow of everything you were talking about. And again, the world of savings is large. So where do you even start? And that really helps give us a good roadmap. And then of course you can customize from there. But I also really like the idea that, we've got some guidelines around savings and what are short-term savings and long-term savings, and especially touching on the idea of retirement planning. It's a big topic. It's always a big topic, but it's certainly a big topic when we're meeting with female clients or female prospects. And something that maybe we're not great at prioritizing for ourselves, like our male counterparts are. And Laura, I know you and I have chatted about this topic before, and we know women do face some unique challenges with retirement planning. So would you walk us through some of those challenges and how you guide your clients through planning for them?
Yes, in general, compared to men, women have less money saved for retirement. If you remember the beginning of the presentation, Tara mentioned that women are making 82 cents on the dollar to what men are making. And we are often tasked with caring for family members. We might care for aging parents or children. So we may choose to work less. We might leave the workforce to be employed part-time, or we might leave the workforce altogether. So additionally, women are living longer, on average 6 to 8 years longer. And we need more money to pay for our living expenses during retirement and our elevated healthcare costs. So this can lead to a retirement savings deficit. So some ideas to help reduce the gap, the retirement savings gap, or just to save a little bit more. Even 1 to 2% more can make a huge difference, especially when you're experiencing years of 1 to 2% more. And you can get the compound interest, which is the kind of the investing magic where your money can really grow over the long term. It's like the time where one plus one equals 5 when you have compound interest. Additionally, just making sure that you're contributing to your retirement plans. According to the Department of Labor, only 46% of women have participated in their retirement plans. So make sure you're part of that 46%. Let's see if we can get that number up. If you leave the workforce, if you're able to continue to save somehow, if you have any earned income, save into an IRA. For women that have husbands, you're likely to live longer than your spouse and become the financial head of household. So if you are not involved in the financial decision making in your house, begin to familiarize yourself with the accounts that you have, where your monies are, what sources of income your family is relying on in retirement. Be familiar with your financial plan. Really work to build your financial confidence.
Yeah, we have talked about this a lot before. All of us have. And it's something that is top of mind for us when we meet with our female clients, and we're really digging into this 46% of women are participating in a retirement plan. And each of us have a passion for women and investing. And, if you're listening today, if you're joining today and you have not yet started participating in your retirement plan, there's probably a good reason you feel like you can't. And I know that if you can get the right counsel, the right partner, the right advisor, like one of these ladies here today, you can maybe overcome the hurdle of why you aren't yet participating in a retirement plan. And there's a lot of different reasons why, either that are legitimate or our fears are pushing us into. But I think what we've all kind of said on this topic is just do it. We just have to do it, even if it's a little bit and it's not everything that maybe the rules say we should be contributing. Something is better than nothing when it comes to contributing to your retirement plan. And that's really helpful information, Laura, especially when you think about the longevity of a woman's life and how we have to do more planning. And I think the good thing is we're generally good at it and we're very thoughtful planners. And part of that then leads into, okay, if you're a good planner naturally and you don't yet know what to do, there is this big difference between saving and investing. And Gwen, we also have some good information to share on this topic, but can you walk us through the difference between saving and investing?
I love that you asked this because these terms are used interchangeably quite often. And I actually just received an email last week from someone asking, where should I put my money if I know I need to buy a car in 2 years? And so my first thought when answering this question is, how soon does he need this money? So time frame is probably the biggest component when we're thinking about savings versus investing. So savings is really for those short-term needs. And we think of short-term as anything that's 5 years or less. And so because you need it sooner, you don't want to subject it to the risk of the market and the volatility that comes with the market. So the best place to stash these funds, even if it kind of seems painful, is a high yield checking account. They're yielding more nowadays because interest rates have gone up, but over that short-term period, it's really liquid, and it's also not subject to the market ups and downs, which you might know about nowadays. And so then the flip side of that is the long-term investing portion. So funds that you may have that you won't need in the next 5 years, such as your retirement accounts, or even just purchasing a house if that's not in the near term. This is where we recommend actually investing the funds. And so these types of investments, such as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, exchange trade funds, we'll go into all of those later, but this is where you can start purchasing those with that money. And so these types of investments are subject to greater risk, but also on the flip side, greater return potential. So over that long-term period, you would hope that they would grow as long as you're invested in things that are high quality and not so skeptical.
Yeah, skeptical is a good word. I also really appreciate, having kind of this number of years marker. We've talked a lot about the planning, the importance of a good foundation and a financial plan, but then also the world of savings. Where do I even start? But now I've been saving and I've got that bucket kind of filled up, and I'm following my 50-30-20 rule. And now I have extra, but how do I know when I'm jumping from saving to investing? And that 5-year mark is a really helpful mark to follow as a general guideline. But also being skeptical, I think maybe comes natural to some of us and can hold us back, especially if we don't feel like we already know everything about everything related to investing. So Laura, if we've never invested before and we're ready to bridge from saving to investing, where do we start?
Yes, I think investing for the first time can be intimidating. It's an industry that is full of jargon and acronyms. And so I think a great place to start is education, understanding what your investment options are and the risks that are associated with those options. Gwen just mentioned the options. The main categories of investment products are stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and exchange traded funds. A stock is a share of ownership in a company, and stock prices go up and down based on a number of factors. They're difficult to predict, but they offer the greatest return over long periods of time. A bond is a loan to a company or a government that is paid back with interest. And an example would be a US Treasury bond. I think we've all heard a lot recently about I-bonds. Those would be examples of bonds. Bonds have considerably less risk, but less return. Another concept that's talked about a lot in investing is diversification. And this is the idea that by owning a large number of assets or a large variety of assets, you reduce the risk that any particular investment could adversely affect the overall portfolio. And this is where mutual funds and exchange traded funds can be a great option, particularly for newer investors that don't want to pick bonds and stocks for their portfolio. So some mutual funds and exchange traded funds can be invested in stocks, they can be invested in bonds, and they can be invested in other assets. So they can have all different kinds of risks. So you can have a stock mutual fund that's more risky, or you can be on the other side of the spectrum with a bond mutual fund that's lower risk. Some differences and similarities between mutual funds and exchange traded funds. Mutual funds tend to be actively managed by a portfolio manager who is selecting the different investments that are owned by the fund, where an ETF tends to be mirroring an index, where, for example, the S&P 500 might be, you might be able to buy an ETF that mirrors that. ETFs trade on the exchange during the day like a stock does, so you can buy and sell them throughout the day, where a mutual fund is bought through an investment company or sold through an investment company based on the value of all the assets that are owned by the fund at the end of the day. Way to understand the concept of a mutual fund is with the soup pot analogy, where the pot is the mutual fund and all of the ingredients that go into the soup are the different assets that are owned by the mutual fund. And when you ladle out a bowl of soup, you get your share of the mutual fund. So my final recommendation with investing is something that Tara alluded to earlier with regards to saving for retirement. And this is that you just need to do it. We talked earlier about the retirement savings gap that women experience. We also experience this investment gap where we don't understand everything there is to know about investing. So instead of just dabbling and getting started, we're keeping vastly larger amounts of money in cash and not invested in the markets. And this can lead to significantly lower asset growth over time. And this is money that is for goals that are 10, 15, 20 years away, maybe even retirement money. We're just going to keep it in cash because we have this analysis paralysis. So I just recommend that you become comfortable being uncomfortable and get started.
Mhm. I love that phrase, Laura, become comfortable being uncomfortable, because I think the world of investing is a world where we can come up with a really great plan, but we can't control what happens. But again, we can trust what has happened over time, and we can trust the plan. And if we're working with the right advisor, like one of the three of you, and we've got a trusted, secure relationship, then when times get rocky or we get insecure about our investment decisions, we can have some support and maybe rebuild that confidence, which is part of this financial literacy. It's not just the knowledge, it's the confidence. And I don't think when you're brand new at anything, including investing, you can build that confidence on your own. And it takes a really strong partner who has good experience to help foster that environment where you can keep pushing forward in your discomfort for your own benefit. And so I think it just speaks volumes to, you know, what the three of you spend your time doing, which is building those relationships and helping women get more comfortable with the idea of investing. But as you mentioned, Laura, there are many different options of what to invest in. And it's good to work with a professional that understands what's best for each unique situation, and each milestone event that comes our way in life might require some kind of adjustment to those investments. But Elizabeth, you know, when we think about investing for our specific situation, what are some considerations we need to make, and how best do we approach these situations? Or how do we determine the best mix of assets for our situation?
Well, when we work with clients to build portfolios, I would say there are three primary considerations before we invest. There are a slew of other factors to consider, taxes being one. I know that's everyone's favorite topic. But to develop a proper mix of assets, sometimes referred to as asset allocation, we should have a really good handle on three things. And we've talked a lot about this one already, both Gwen and Laura talked about it. But the first one I would mention is time horizon. So it's very key. We would invest differently for retirement than we would dollars earmarked for something that is, as we mentioned, less than 5 years. We may be able to get, you know, short-term T-bill or something for something under 5 years, but a lot greater than 5 years is a much different situation. So our second major consideration is risk tolerance. So I like to call this the sleep at night factor. And time is important, but even if you have 20 years until you retire and you can't stomach the ups and downs as we're experiencing this year in 2022, you know, we have to talk through all of that, because we have to align your asset allocation and your mix of assets, or you can use those terms interchangeably, with your risk tolerance. So the last thing that I would say is that we need to know your liquidity needs. This becomes a major focus in retirement when we're helping you to replace a paycheck, with what I sometimes call a portfolio paycheck. And so again, I would say time horizon, risk tolerance, and liquidity needs are each important factors to consider when developing your portfolio or your personalized mix of assets.
those are really helpful keys to understanding. This is how, we walk clients through determining what's the right mix of assets or the best approach for investing for their specific situation. I think the sleep at night factor is a big one, especially these days. And, that I think takes a big gut check, maybe more regularly than in the past. And, Gwen, we know 2022 has been a volatile market. It seems like it might just be better to wait until things are more stable before we start investing. This idea of just do it, maybe that's a bad idea right now. But is this a good time to invest, or should we change our strategy because things are riskier now?
This is definitely a question we get all the time, especially lately. Should I put all my investments in cash, or I have cash, should I invest it now? Our answer is that it's truly impossible to know the answer to that question. I or anyone can't time the market. So you'll almost always get it wrong, myself included. I can study the market all I want, but there's no right answer to, is it good or bad right now? What's going to happen in the future? What we can say for certain is that by not investing, you miss out on any potential that could be there in the future. So it may go down in the short term, but over the long term, we would expect it to go up. So just by staying invested or simply starting investing, it's really powerful for your future and your portfolio, because the markets tend to go up over time. And so over the history of the stock market, like the S&P 500, the market has gone up about 7% annually. And so this means that even with things like the Great Depression or the 2008 recession or the 2001 tech bubble, all those factored in, the market has still gone up on average 7% annually. So, you take out all the big ups and downs, that comes up with a pretty solid average, I would think. And therefore, if you're continually investing over that period, you'd experience that same investment growth rate over that time. And so what we do here at Johnson is try to look past those short-term concerns and really the market concerns and the big news headlines to help you invest for that long-term growth. So we're thinking the strategy and the topics, the liquidity needs and investment mix, like what Elizabeth mentioned, to help plan for your long-term growth instead of trying to time out, is it good or bad right now?
I'd also just like to add or echo Gwen's comments and, just confirm or reiterate that you'll be rewarded if you stay the course. And we have one last slide that we wanted to share with you. And I think this one really illustrates how difficult it is to effectively time the market. I find slides like this incredibly helpful in years such as 2022 and what we've all been going through when we have large swings in either direction. This slide simply illustrates a 19-year time period from January 2002 through the end of last year, December 2021. And it shows us that the S&P returned 9.52% over that time period. So if emotions get the best of you and you sell it in opportune times, you may miss some of the strong recovery days. The rectangular box almost in the middle of the page notes that 7 of the best 10 days occurred within 2 weeks of the 10 worst days. So the overwhelming message when it comes to long-term investing remains simply stay the course.
Yes, and it sounds like simply stay the course as long as you know you are invested in quality assets, you've done the right planning with an experienced advisor, and when life throws different events at you, you can maybe rely on that. And so maybe the comfort and security that we need when things are out of control and volatile, maybe you could have a little higher level of comfort and security knowing that you've been walking with a trusted partner through this before things got rocky, or even starting now when things do feel rocky can be really helpful. But Elizabeth, Laura, and Gwen, thank you. I think that those that have joined us have probably really enjoyed hearing from you and all of your experience and sharing your expertise, and also just always acknowledging that each situation is very different and requires a customization of what is a general roadmap or plan. And I always enjoy hearing again from you effective ways that we as women can plan, that we can save, and then we can invest with confidence. And I think that what we've talked through today has really helped build that idea of financial literacy, building in the knowledge that can then lead to confidence and help us make more effective financial decisions over time. But before our webinar began, we talked about if anyone had any questions to put them in the Q&A box. And we do have a few questions that we're going to field here because it's 11:42 and we do want to be respectful of everyone's time. But I think we have some time to get through maybe 2 or 3 of these. So ladies, I just want to throw it out to the group. A big question right now is, what are your thoughts on inflation? Go.
We're all fighting over this question. Yeah, it's, I mean, even my kids have noticed that prices are going up this year. We are experiencing unprecedented inflation. It's been a long time since we've had inflation like we have right now. We had a global pandemic that caused a global supply chain crunch. And we've had trillions of dollars of government spending that have really added to people's ability to purchase goods. So some things that you can do in inflationary times is to, I think, really hone in on your financial planning. We can't control inflation. That's out of our hands. I'm going to let the Fed governors work on that for me. But I can really focus on how I'm spending my money. I can hone in on making sure I have an emergency fund so that if we end up in a recession, I'm prepared for the uncertainties that could be ahead of me. Long-term inflation, I really do think at some point inflation is going to come back down. I think the Fed governors are going to increase interest rates enough that inflation is going to come down. And long-term inflation is still under 3%. So I think it kind of is a great illustration of the eroding power that inflation has on the dollar. So, you know, people who've kept money in their savings account and their checking account when inflation was 2% probably didn't notice as much, but it still was the same effect. It just really reduced your spending power. So I think it is another illustration of why investing is important. Even though the stock market and the bond market are down this year, that's not going to continue forever. It's a great way to have your assets outgrow inflation is by investing.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. Inflation can feel really scary, but that your perspective on what might come in the future, I think, helps balance what feels scary today. Shifting just a little bit to investing. Another question we've received that's a popular one is, what can I buy if I don't have a lot or I'm just getting started?
I can take that one. So Laura went through a great explanation of exchange traded funds and mutual funds. So I would really direct someone to one or the other. And really, I don't think it has to be one or the other with mutual funds and exchange traded funds. There's a lot of debate that has gone on for decades about active management, meaning a mutual fund where you have a portfolio manager buying and selling stocks and bonds for the fund, and a passive like an ETF that mirrors an index. A lot of debate over which one is the best choice. And my answer to that is always really owning both can make a lot of sense. An ETF, of course, because it mirrors an index, is going to give you the market returns. But in a year like this, where like we at Johnson manage an active portfolio of stocks and mutual funds as well, we tend to outperform in years like 2022 when the stock market is down quite a bit, and this year even the bond market. So I would say a combination of both a mutual fund and an ETF that aligns with some of the things we already talked about, which is your time horizon, risk tolerance, and liquidity needs.
That's really helpful. It's good. It's good to hear this information over and over again. It starts to get in our memory bank, I think. Does for me anyway. And so I think we have time for maybe one more question. And this one is about nearing retirement. So ladies, one of the questions is, when should I shift my investments to a more moderate asset allocation as I near retirement?
I can jump to this one. So as we talked about savings versus investing, really within that 5-year time frame, getting close to retirement is when we start to have these discussions with clients about shifting their portfolio, maybe from a aggressive portfolio to more of a moderate one, like what you hear is a 60-40. So 60% still being in stocks and maybe that 40% being in bonds or cash. And what we look at when we decide what that asset allocation is right for you and our clients in retirement is looking at what your cash flow needs are. And so if you know that you're spending a certain amount of money using by tracking it or just knowing off the top of your head, maybe what you need in retirement, that's the bucket that you want to have at least 3 to 5 years in bonds or cash, those lower volatile assets is that spending that you want to have in retirement. So if you spend $60,000 a year, you could have anywhere from 180,000 or up to the 5 years in that bonds and cash. So for you, that may be a 60-40. For someone else, that may be a 70-30. But that's really where we're looking to, because what we don't want to happen is a recession happen and you're 100% in stocks and then you have to sell stocks while they're down. We want to be able to have some of that protection for your liquidity in those lower volatile assets to draw from when we maybe are seeing a down market. And then, you can kind of pull from both when you see the flip side with an up market.
This has been really helpful. I want to share one more comment that's popped up in the Q&A to you ladies. It's just a lot of praise, a lot of, I love this. This has been a great webinar. Thank you. And questions of, will there be more like this in the future? And so if anyone else is wondering that, yes, it's our plan to do more webinars like this in the future. It's always good to get feedback. It helps us refine these types of things. So we just really want to thank you for joining us today on our webinar, Financial Literacy Being Knowledge and Confidence. And we hope your confidence will grow after spending this time with us today. If you wish to connect with anyone on this webinar today or others at our firm, you can contact us at info@johnson.com. We will share that contact information on the screen as we close out our webinar today. So thank you again for joining, and we hope you have a great day.